Welcome back, everybody. It's Jen Shirkus here from shirkus.com, and as I'm posting this video, it is the middle of December. Have you made any holiday cards yet? Well, it's still not too late. I have some tips and tricks for you that hopefully you will be able to use and still get some holiday cards out this season. These are some tips and tricks that you can use with supplies that you already have in your studio space. I am featuring Flora and Fauna today. I love their stamp sets, and I always tend to feature them this time of year because their sets lead you to quick and easy but yet beautiful cards. Tip number one is to do some solid stamping. To start off, I'm doing a very quick and easy watercolor background. I'm just using some distress inks. I'm using peacock feathers, and I'm working on a stitched rectangle that I die cut out of distress watercolor cardstock. I'm adding a lot of water to the cardstock and then brushing the ink on there, moving the color around into the shape that I would like for the background. Now I am heat setting it till it's nice and dry, and then we're going to get to stamping. This set from Flora and Fauna, the bottle brush snow globe set, has some adorable solid Christmas tree stamps. So I am using some Distress Oxide, the new Rustic Wilderness, and I'm going to be stamping one of the trees 3 times, starting in the center, stamping that one, and then stamping on the right, and then stamping on the left. I decided I wanted a little bit of texture in the background, and really, what is a holiday card with a little bit of without a little bit of snow? So I am taking the little dots from the stamp set, inking it up in Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide. I'm stamping it off on some scratch cardstock and then stamping it onto my card. So I'll get a very faint impression of these adorable little snowflakes. Next up, I am stamping the sentiment in Guava Lawn Fawn ink. These solid sentiments are really fun to stamp, and they're easy to just cut out with your scissors. If you were making multiples of this card, of course you would stamp a whole bunch down your cardstock. You could definitely use a paper trimmer if you would like. I just like the rough look of the hand cut sentiment. Now I'm going to use a little piece of 3M foam tape to pop the sentiment up off of my trees. And then I'm going to adhere this panel onto some colored cardstock. Keeping it simple with the stitched rectangle layer and then the colored cardstock layer is really all that you need to have a really beautiful holiday card. Once we get this on there, I don't know about you, but I cannot create holiday cards without a little bit of sparkle. So here we're going to use a glue tube, and I'm adding some glue to the base of the trees. And I am going to be sprinkling on some chunky glitter. I just love this glitter, and it is honestly so perfect for snowfall underneath these trees. And adding this little bit of sparkle really just makes the card all come together. Next simple design that you could recreate, we are going to use some solid images. And what we're going to do is some repetitive stamping. So again, use any solid images that you have in your crafty space. Today I'm using the Holiday Sugar Cookies stamp set from Flora and Fauna. And using solid images and doing some repetitive stamping, you are able to quickly and easily make a beautiful background without having to worry if you're going to have enough pattern paper to make that stack of holiday cards that you want to be making. So what I'm doing is I'm inking up the stamps in Distress Oxide because they have a pigment property to them. They do stamp solid images very nicely, but I do want the color to be a little less intense. So I'm stamping it off on some extra cardstock and then stamping it onto my background. I started off with the candy canes using Festive Berries Distress Oxides. Then I just did this adorable little reindeer, and that was with Vintage Photo Distress Oxides. And now I'm doing this really sweet little tree, and this is done in the new Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide color. Be sure when you're doing this type of stamping that you are stamping off the background. And again, if I was going to be creating a stack of these cards, I would have definitely put the image in my MISTI, stamped one image on all my background layers, and then repositioned the stamp and stamped the second image in all my background layers. And that way, that type of process will go by much quicker. Now I am doing something that's a little bit tedious. I am doing some sentiment stacking where I have die cut the word Mary multiple times from some red cardstock. I glued the letters together, and then on top I added the letter cut out of some gold sparkle cardstock. Definitely this is a little bit of a time waster, but if you find a sentiment in your stash that is all one die, this would have been a lot faster. But when you are creating a background with the repetitive stamping, it's really nice to have a big, bold sentiment to go across that background and really, really stand out. So I just stamped the little sentiment from the stamp set that was included in the holiday sugar cookies, and I'm using that for my positioning of where to attach the letters. I started with the Y because I knew I wanted the little swoop of the Y to hook right into that other sentiment, and then I'm working backwards with the other letters, attaching them with a glue tube. Once we get that all in place, I am going to use some 3M foam tape, and just like the first card, I am popping it up off of a colored cardstock. So again, keep it simple. 2 layers will be much easier for mailing as well, so you're not stuck with any extra postage. Once I have this done, as an added quick embellishment, I'm using some red stickles for the little reindeer's noses. And that's it. Card number 2 done. All right, third tip and trick is to simplify your coloring. If you are going to be doing any coloring on your holiday cards, especially if they're last minute, simplify the coloring. So you'll see here, I am using all the images from the Outline Deer Flora and Fauna stamp set. And I am going to be stamping a bunch of the images without doing any coloring. I'm stamping it in the River Rock Lawn Fawn ink. This is a Copic friendly ink, but it's also just a really beautiful gray. So even though I'm not going to be coloring these birch trees, it's just a really nice wintry gray. I realize now, watching this video, if I had just turned my MISTI, stamping these off the edge would have been a lot easier, but leave it to me to do it the hard way. Also included in the set were these adorable little hanging stars, and I just think they are the sweetest. So I adhered each one to an acrylic block, the long one on one side and the shorter one on the other side. And here I am just decorating the birch tree, adding these little dangling hearts, and oh my gosh, it just looks so, so sweet. And then next up, what I'm doing is stamping one of the deer from the set, and it's going to still be in that River Rock Lawn Fawn ink so that everything is kind of that gray tone. and I am doing some simple coloring. Not a lot of colors so that it can be quick and easy. I'm starting out with the antlers in E53 and E51. Honestly, this is how I do my coloring all year round, whether I'm in a time crunch to get my holiday cards done or I've got hours and hours to color. But I have a lot of tips and tricks for you about my two-color Copic coloring. If you're interested, I will link my Copic 101 tutorial down below. So definitely check that out. For the colors for the deer, I'm actually using E27 and E23. This isn't my go-to for browns. I tend to do E37 and E33, but I wanted the browns to be a little bit richer, a little bit darker for this card, again, since there's not going to be a whole lot of color on it. So I started by adding the E27 into the shadow of the deer, and now with the E23, I'm blending out that shadow. I'm not coloring anywhere else on the deer, just blending out that shadowed area, thickening it, and really saturating the cardstock so that the two colors will blend together. Once I'm done blending out the shadow, continuing with that E23, I am going to keep coloring the deer, but just one layer. So I'm filling in all of his white parts with this E23, but just one layer. And then any harsh lines I have, I'm just flicking it out with the marker. So essentially what I did is on the shadowed parts, I have probably 3 to 4 layers of the E23. The rest of the deer is one layer of the E23. And then when I'm flicking it out, it's just 2 layers of the E23. Again, definitely check out my Copic 101 tutorial that is linked below. I think you'll find that really helpful. On the breast of the deer and the head of the deer and the nose of the deer, I used a little bit of E41. And now I'm jazzing up his scarf with a little BG13 and BG11. Again, if you are trying to get some cards done in a pinch and you want to get them out quickly, keep your Copic coloring to a minimum. And if I were to be making a bunch of these cards, I would color all of the antlers first. So let's say I'm making a stack of 10, and then I would color 10 of the browns and then 10 of the teal scarves. Now I'm adding a sweet little sentiment. It says, "Let it snow" on the background. I wanted to make sure it was going to fit with the deer. And as my motto is, glitter all the things, I'm using a quickie glue pen and some Distress Platinum glitter dust on the stars, just to add a little bit of twinkle to these adorable stars that are hanging down. And just back to the sentiment, I chose to do "Let It Snow," and I chose to do a teal scarf. That way, if this card is delivered late, since we're getting close to that deadline, it can be more a winter greeting and somebody will really enjoy having it up past the holidays, and it will really make them smile past, December 25th. So I'm adding that little deer with some foam tape to the stitched rectangle, and then I am attaching it to some red cardstock. Again, it could have been a teal cardstock that would have made it a little less Christmassy and a little bit more wintry. And then along the ground, I'm using a glue tube and a little bit on the deer's hooves to add some glue. And again, I'm sprinkling that chunky glitter to add some snowfall to this card. So that's it, you guys. This is 3 cards giving you some quick tips and tricks to get those cards made. You definitely still have time. Don't give up. Do some solid stamping, do repetitive stamping, or definitely simplify your coloring. Some other tips and tricks: you can do multiples and do the assembly method. Using a stamp platform like a Misty will definitely speed up your process on multiple cards that are going to look the same. And adding glitter is fast, easy, and inexpensive, so you don't need a whole lot of different embellishments and supplies. Using something as simple as stitched rectangles really adds to your card, makes them look fancy with not a whole lot of effort. And last but not least, if you're nervous about them getting the cards on time, make them more snowflake themed with winter blues and purples and colors like that. And then that way, if it does come after the holidays, it will still be timely and brighten their day. I hope these tips really helped you guys. I really hope you'll make some holiday cards this season. I know it will definitely brighten people's day to get them in their mailbox. And please be sure to subscribe to my channel down below. And remember, I have all kinds of information on the supplies that I'm using and a link to the blog post as well in the description. Thank you guys, and happy holidays!